Hello, grade 9, and welcome to your last major grammar lesson of this year, and it's called Conditionals. Okay, by the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify conditional sentences and change from a real-life situation sentence into a conditional sentence using 3 steps. Okay, first of all, what's a conditional sentence? A conditional sentence is a supposition or an assumption that is opposite of reality. Let's take a look at the following sentence. James likes pizza, so he went to an Italian restaurant for lunch. This is reality. This is the real situation. Now, I want to change it to a conditional. I want to assume or suppose the opposite of that. That's what a conditional is. Now, if I'm assuming, I'm making a different assumption, I say, if James didn't like pizza, he wouldn't go to an Italian restaurant. So that's opposite of reality. Okay, now conditional sentences. First of all, you need to know that a conditional sentence is basically a cause-effect sentence where the cause part is the if part, is the condition, and the effect part is the result. Example, if you study well, cause or condition, effect or result, you will pass. Now, in grammar, you will be asked to change a real-life situation sentence into a conditional or a supposition that is opposite of reality. Let's take a look at the following example. Rebecca enjoys swimming, so she enrolled in the swimming club. Real situation. Let's say you were asked to change that supposition to something opposite. Okay, then you would say, if Rebecca didn't enjoy swimming, she wouldn't enroll in a swimming club. Do they both mean the same? Yes. Okay, they both mean the same. Rebecca enjoyed swimming, so she enrolled in the swimming club. Yet, if Rebecca didn't enjoy swimming, she wouldn't enroll in a swimming club. So this is the conditional. Now, in order to change from a real-life situation to a conditional, you must carefully follow the following step. Guys, it's all about steps in these last 3 lessons. Okay? First major step, very easy, identify the cause and underline it. Step 2, move 1 step back in the timeline, just as we did with the coded and reported, meaning all the presents become their past. Present simple, past simple. Present continuous, past continuous. Present perfect, past perfect. However, past simple becomes past perfect. Okay? Past perfect remains the same because it's the end of the timeline. Final step, you change the positive to negative and the negative to positive. Why? Because we are supposing the opposite of that reality. We are making a supposition or an assumption that is opposite of reality. That's what a conditional is. Rima went to the doctor because she suffered a severe stomach ache. This is what happened, what really happened. Now I want to change that to a conditional. Step 1, underline the cause. Okay, of course, it's after because she suffered from a severe stomach ache. That's my cause. Step 2, I take a look at the verb that is in the cause part. Okay, in the condition part. Suffered. What tense is that? That is in the past simple. So when I move back 1 step in the timeline, past simple becomes past perfect. Suffered becomes had suffered. And look, this is positive. I have to change it to negative. Okay? Positive also changes to negative to make sense. It becomes Efrima. Past perfect plus not. Positive becomes negative. If Rima hadn't suffered a severe stomach ache, she would not have gone to a doctor. Okay, the following chart will really help you to quickly change to a conditional. Okay, I came up with this chart to make your life so much easier. Let's take a look at this real life situation. He eats junk food, so he became obese. This is in which tense? Of course, we look at, first of all, identify the cause. I did step 1. The cause is he eats junk food. That's the condition. Tense, present simple, so we are here. Step 2, move 1 step back in the timeline. Here we go. Eats becomes, of course, ate, and positive becomes negative. Now, when you move 1 step back in the timeline, you go down. I made this chart for you on purpose. You go like that. This is how you continue. So, if he didn't eat, of course, eat became ate, but I want to put it in the negative. Okay? If he didn't eat junk food, he wouldn't, of course, this is positive. I need to put it in the negative. If he didn't eat junk food, he wouldn't become obese. Would plus base form. Okay? You moved 1 step back in the timeline. Present simple, back to past simple. You go horizontally in this chart. What should you write later? If he didn't eat junk food, comma, this is what you write after the comma. He wouldn't become obese. Would plus not, because this is positive, we have to change it to negative to make sense. Okay, so if he didn't eat junk food, he wouldn't become obese. Does this make sense? Of course. Those 2 sentences basically mean the same. This is the reality and this is the conditional. Let's take another example, okay, where the verb is in the past tense, past simple, not present simple. Randall caught a cold because he swam in rainy weather. Step 1, underline the cause. We did that. Step 2, let's take a look at the verb in the cause. Swam, past simple. So we are basically here. Okay, step 2, move 1 step back in the timeline. Past simple becomes past perfect. And let's go horizontally. So if Randall, okay, hadn't, okay, swam, in the past perfect, had swum. And this is positive, isn't it? We have to put a not. If Randall hadn't swum in the cold weather, okay, or if he hadn't swum in the cold weather, comma, what do we put after the comma? We go here horizontally. Would plus have plus past participle, but we have to put it in the negative. Why? Because here it's in the positive. Randall wouldn't have caught a cold. Let's read the 2 sentences again. Do they make sense? Of course, they do make sense. Okay, now conditionals without if. This is very, very important, very easy though. Nothing to worry about. Sometimes we write a conditional without if. Most conditional sentences are if. If I study well, I would pass. If I had gone to the doctor, I wouldn't have suffered so much. If I had told my friend the truth, we wouldn't have had this huge fight. Most of them start with if. However, some conditional sentences, some supposition sentences start with where, should, and had. Here you will tell me that they do sound weird. They do, but they are correct. Let's see. If he were here, he would see you. This is a conditional with if. We can write it in a different way without using if. It's a conditional but without using if. Were he here, he would see you. I know you're going to tell me it's weird, but it's correct. All we did was, we want to write it without an if. We cross out the if, put the verb in front of the subject. Why? Only because it's a conditional. Were he here, he would see you. It's not a question, it's just a conditional without if. And this is how we do it. Okay? Now let's take a look at a few more examples which will help you. Now, conditionals are without if are with where, had, and should. Should you need any help, please call me. This means if you need any help, please call me. It's just that we used should instead. Were I in your place, I would listen I wouldn't listen to his poor advice. It means if I were in your place. Okay? 3. Had he listened to my advice, he would have done a better job. It means if he had listened to my advice, he would have done a better job. Okay, the only thing is that instead of if, we used should, were, or had. Those 3 words. Now let's do the following exercise together. It will help us a lot. Rewrite the following sentences starting as indicated without changing the meaning. If you should need any help, please ask the assistant. This is how you do it. Step 1, cross the if and start with should. This is sort of an inversion. Okay, you invert the subject and the verb. Should you need any help, and continue the same. Please do not move one step back in the timeline. Why? Because both sentences are in the conditional form. Okay? Both are in the same form. No need to move one step back. Should you need any help, please ask the assistant. If I were to win the lottery, I would buy a huge mansion. Where? Please start with where. What do? Cross out the if, invert the subject and the verb. The subject is I. Were I to win the lottery, this is correct. Were I to win the lottery, continue the same, I would buy a huge mansion. Okay? Totally correct. 3. If Jared had spoken to me, I would have forgiven him. Had. What do? Had Jared spoken to me, you continue like that, I would have forgiven him. Those are the conditionals without if. Now you have the conditionals with wish. I wish. How do you write those? Also very easy, but you need to be a little careful with the details. Whenever we're expressing a wish, the form should be as follows. I wish I had $1 million. Past tense. I wish I have $1 million is wrong. When we're expressing a wish, we have to use the past tense, past simple tense. I wish I were able to fly. Now you're going to ask me, why do we use were instead of I? Because in the conditionals, we cannot use was. No matter what the pronoun is or the subject is, I, you, we, they, he, she, it, all of them take were and do not take was. Okay? I wish that we didn't have to work today. Past simple. Okay? Again, I'll read the note. In any conditional sentence, we cannot use was. I, you, we, they, he, she, it, were. Okay? We use were instead. Okay? Now let's take a look at those quick examples. If I was you, I would listen. Wrong. If I were you. I wish I have $1 million again. No. I wish I had $1 million. Why? Because when I'm writing a wish, I'm expressing a wish, I use the past simple only. And in the case of verb be, I use were and not was. Okay, moving on, correct the one grammar mistake in the following sentences. If I have more time, I would play video games. Here I sort of am expressing a wish or a dream. I wish I had more time. So obviously this is the mistake here. If I had more time, I would play video games. I wish I was able to climb that tree and check out the view. It's a wish, and of course it's a conditional. We cannot use was, we use were. I wish I were able to. If Daniel had saw the movie, past perfect, of course, had seen the movie, he would have been thrilled. What you are trying to say? Of course not. What are you trying to say? When we are writing a WH question, the verb comes before the subject. And there they are. Okay, now moving on to the worksheet which I'm going to give you here. I explained it in detail. I want you to go through it. I put all the steps. It's very important, okay? Now, forms with unless. You have, sometimes instead of if, they would say unless. What does unless mean? Sometimes here it gets a little confusing, okay? But with practice, which we're going to do a lot, we will be able to avoid the little mistake. Unless means if not. If not, okay? And it's already negative. Okay, Sam listened to the news, so he knew about the quarantine order. Unless Sam had listened to the news, he wouldn't have known about the quarantine order. Now, of course, this is in the positive here. But why didn't we put it in the negative here? Very important, because we have unless. And in unless, we already have a not. We cannot put two negatives together. Unless Sam hadn't listened to the news, that's wrong. That would be a double negative in the same clause, which is wrong. It would be illogical. So unless Sam had listened to the news, meaning if not, if Sam hadn't listened to the news, he would not have known about the quarantine order. So always when you have unless, replace it, just like you do in math. Replace it with if not and continue. Okay, and don't put two negatives in the same part of the sentence, in the same clause. Okay, now the exercises. Change the following sentence to the conditional form starting as indicated. Sam didn't attend the ceremony because he was too sick. Step 1, identify the cause. He was too sick. Okay, was. Step 2, okay, the verb is in the past simple, so I have to move back to the past perfect. Step 3, positive becomes negative and negative becomes positive. If he was becomes hadn't been, okay? Had been and positive becomes negative, hadn't been. Too sick, Sam would have attended the ceremony. Go back to the chart I gave you. You continue horizontally and you have would plus have plus past participle, okay? Negative becomes positive. Cynthia likes bargaining, so she usually gets good prices. Cause she likes bargaining. Okay, if she likes, move one step back in the timeline, present simple, past simple, and negative. If she didn't like bargaining, comma, remove the so, she wouldn't usually get good prices. Positive becomes negative, and we use would plus base form. Okay? Those are the answers. Greg was speaking out of turn, so the teacher asked him to keep silent. Step 1, cause Greg was speaking out of turn. Was speaking becomes had been speaking. Past progressive becomes past perfect progressive. If Greg hadn't been speaking out of turn, the teacher wouldn't have asked him to keep silent. Positive, negative. The avalanche left many victims since the authorities didn't have time to warn the people. Here is the cause. Since means because. If the authorities, okay, now didn't have, okay, I want to put that in the positive and in the which tense. This is past simple. I need to put it in the past perfect. If the authorities had, the past perfect of have is had. If the authorities had time to warn the people, the avalanche wouldn't have left many victims. Ramesh eats healthy food, so he maintains good health. Cause Ramesh eats healthy food. Present simple. Move back in the timeline to past simple and put it in the negative. But look at this, unless. Okay, here the cause is with the unless. Unless Ramesh, do I say didn't eat? No, because we cannot have a double negative. This means if not. Unless Ramesh ate healthy food, he wouldn't, this is positive, I put it in the negative, he wouldn't maintain good health. She wasn't there during the festival. She really regrets it. Okay? Unless meaning if not. Unless she had, okay, been there during the festival, she wouldn't really regret it. Unless she had been there, okay? She had been. We cannot put the two negatives in the same clause. She wouldn't really regret it. Here we can put it in the negative, okay? Here are the answers. Take a very good look at them at your own time. They're all in the PowerPoint slides, okay? Now, conditionals without if, we talked about those. How do we change from a conditional with if to a conditional without if? I talked about that. Step 1, you cross the if. Step 2, you invert the places of the verb and the subject. If I were a doctor, I would volunteer to help the victims of the earthquake. Remove the if. Were I a doctor, this is a correct sentence, I would volunteer to help the victims of the earthquake. Now this whole part stays the same. Why don't I move one step back in the timeline or put positive in the negative? Vice versa, because both of them are conditionals. No need to do that. If you should need, sorry about this, if you should need any help, don't hesitate to ask. Should you need any help, don't hesitate to ask. If Jenny had been more serious, she might have passed. Had Jenny been more serious, she might have passed. 3. The citizens might have been more satisfied if the government had offered them some help. Had the, where's the cause here? Okay, this could be confusing. Had the government offered them some help, comma, the citizens might have been more satisfied. Here I put the cause here. Sometimes the cause is put in the second part of the sentence, okay? So don't let that confuse you. Okay, so finally, if you go on that trip, don't forget to contact me daily. I put should. All you do is just put you here. Should you go on that trip, don't forget to contact me daily. So this is it for the worksheet. This is it for the lesson. For any questions, please write them down and ask me during Zoom and we can discuss it. See you then. Bye-bye.